Boker Tov, Chaverim. Welcome once again to another Heartfelt Haftarah. Here we are in the middle of summer in the heat of Texas. August is about to begin, and we find ourselves in the seven Haftarot of consolation. The Haftarot that the rabbis decreed should be read between Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, and Rosh Hashanah, as we renew ourselves yet again in the coming year 5784. So, anyway, we are on the second of our Haftarot of consolation. Once again, it is Second Isaiah. Second Isaiah, starting in Isaiah 40, offers so many, I use the word lyrical, beautiful, very attractive oracles for the people Israel. We pretty much think that Isaiah, the second Isaiah, lived during the time at the tail end of the exile when many people felt like there was just no future for the Israelite people now becoming the Jewish people. But Isaiah sends the message that people should not despair and that God will help us, deliver us, comfort us. And that's exactly what continues going on in our particular portion, which is Isaiah 49, 14 to 51, 3. Now, let's talk about, in terms of tent pegs, let's talk about one of the features here is that Isaiah is the longest, not only of the prophetic books, but of any book in the Bible, 66 chapters. And in the Middle Ages, we started dividing them up into chapters and verses. But before that, long before that, the full collection of Isaiah existed pretty much as we know it today, but without any divisions or designations. And I would say, that's my position, that one of the things you will notice reading Isaiah and ignoring the existing current divisions is how often Isaiah shifts tone, or as I often note, metaphor. When he chooses to speak about God and Israel, he may talk about us in terms of being a creation. He may talk about us as being the children of God. He may talk of Israel as being the wife of God. He may talk about Israel as a divine servant. I take the position that these shifts in metaphor and shifts in ways of expressing himself rhetorically represent different oracles from different times, and they have just been laid one after the other, waiting for the medievals to divide the whole thing up into chapters and verses and completely ignoring all the different changes in tone, rhetoric, and poetics. So, if you were to ask me, I would say that this particular Haftarah is made up of at least 4 different oracles that were probably originally spoken or written independently of each other. And it is just time and technique and the verities of the way the Bible was preserved that these are now all together in 1.5 chapters. All right. So let's go to our Haftarah, and I will call your attention to some of the features. So if you look at this, you will see a number of different compositions. First of all, and what I'm going to read to you in a few moments, is the passage where it talks about would any woman abandon her child? And if God if a woman would not abandon her child, God will not abandon us. So it's a parental child relationship. And then you start hearing another oracle in which it talks about the reversal between Israel and the nations, uses the image of kings and queens. And then as you get further into it, we enter into another interpretation where it becomes a matter of husband and wife. Uh, uh, did God ever issue a bill of divorce to the people Israel? And the answer rhetorically is no. So we've gone from parent to child, reversals of fortune, then we switch to a metaphor of husband and wife, and then we wind up, as we get to Isaiah 50, into a different tone, once again, which has been identified as the tradition of the suffering servant, which is something we'll talk about more when we get further into the other Haftarot. But it's basically the image of Israel as an afflicted person whose affliction actually, Dafka, paradoxically, brings healing to the world. And it's an interesting one. It will become very prominent when we talk about Isaiah 53 and our relationship with Christianity, but we're not going to focus on that right now. So what I would like to read to you is the very beginning, which is Isaiah, second Isaiah loves to have different voices speaking, and they're sort of not a chorus, but a antiphonal communication going on. And here we have the personified Jewish people represented by the mountain in Jerusalem called Zion, which is how we eventually end up with the idiom that Jewish nationalism is called Zionism, right? So the mountain stands in for Jerusalem, and that in turn stands in for the Jewish people. So archly poetical. It starts like this. Zion says, the Eternal has forsaken me. My sovereign has forgotten me. And then another rhetorical turn. Can a mother forget her babe or stop loving the child of her womb? Even these could forget, but I could not forget you. That is, God will not forget the Jewish people. Indeed, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hands. Interesting discussion we could have about the idea of, does Judaism permit tattoos? Well, apparently God has tattooed the name Israel upon the palms of his hands, which is so interesting on a number of levels, as far as, anthropomorphism of God and things like this. Indeed, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hands. Your safety is continually in my thoughts, hands and thoughts, mind and action. Your builders drive out your destroyers, and those who wrought havoc with you depart from you. I will separate you from the people who have done you harm. Look and see, they are gathering and coming to you, all of them. As I live, says the Eternal One. You shall put all of them on like ornaments. You shall bind them on yourself like a bride. Now we have shifted metaphors from parent to child to husband and wife. And I think it's saying is that the people who once tormented us will acknowledge us and appreciate us and celebrate us. You shall put them on like an ornament. You shall bind them to yourself like a bride. So lovely, lovely images. Just to keep thinking about a couple of things going on here. And another image that will come up frequently is the idea of the builders. The restoration of Jerusalem becomes a symbol of the restoration of the Jewish people. So we've hit two metaphors. I'd say they actually belong together, that we started out with the parent-child, and we end with the husband-wife, bride and groom. And the decorating of the ornaments, of course, we've all seen in Middle Eastern culture, the tradition of decorating the bride with silver, gold, and basically her dowry. She wears her dowry, so that's one. But when thinking about the writing on the hands, imagine the Middle Eastern tradition of henna decorating. We have seen this where henna is used to create a beautiful decoration on the hands of the bride as an act of beautification for her wedding. It just feels very much akin to what we're talking about, where the name Israel, the bride, is inscribed upon God's hand. So a couple of lovely images, relational images, which is ultimately where Judaism puts us, just like a husband and wife, just like a parent and a child. We don't always understand each other, but we love each other. And likewise, the Jewish people and God, we don't really understand God. Sometimes it seems like God doesn't really understand us. But what Isaiah is trying to tell us is that the relationship endures through all of the dissatisfaction, the tragedy, the loss, all of that, that our tie to one another is impossible to cut, irreducible, can never be dissolved. And that is the fundamental message that